All right, here we are. It is July 19th. It happens to be John Sibley Butler's birthday. And to celebrate that, we have a great guest, Richard Medina from CPS Energy. Before we get started, though, and have a wonderful hour, let's ask our birthday boy to play a song for us.
You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me. When the road is rough, up ahead and you're miles and miles from your real nice bed. Just remember what your old pal said. You got a friend in me. You got a friend in me.
All right. All right. John Sibley Butler, it's your birthday. The heat is on. It's 99 degrees, according to my watch in Austin, Texas. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine on the day of my birth. I had a good board meeting yesterday. We had a little board birthday party for me. And as you can see, it is hot. Not only is it hot, but it is hot in the news. And it looks like to me, there are many states that's trying to become Texas. I saw that there was a big outage up in Waco yesterday. And in the midst of all the heat, it looks like we have a lot of international stuff going on. We have a U.S. soldier that walked to the North Korea. So what is going on here? We have an ambassador from China that's missing now in America. What is going on here? And in between it all, we're trying to correct the supply chain to make sure that things are well when it comes to consumer production and other kind of things that's in the supply chain. And another huge thing that is really happening is the movement of people in America and across the globe. We've mentioned that before, but we really have a movement of people within America. As great cities that were great cities, they're losing great population. And of course, we know that they are simply following the opportunity structure that's provided by entrepreneurs and other kinds of enterprises. We have an election coming up, and we still have President Trump sort of hovering over everything with his special counsels ordering him to do stuff, and on the other hand, his popularity is raising among the general population. And then, of course, we have the international stuff. The war is still there, and we added that. You can add the Israeli conflict to that also. So America goes along as it always has, as long as we don't bomb the major places in America. It looks like we're fine. We just move along. But there's big trouble in the world. It's trouble in energy. It's trouble in starvation. It's trouble in the movement of people. But more importantly, we have always been able to solve things and don't talk about the problems. Let us come up with solutions.
There you go. There you go. Llewellyn King, how are you, sir?
Well, I'm very well. Thank you for inquiring. It is a troubled world, and I believe that we really are at a point of possible, on the very edge of global catastrophe. Not is it just hot in Austin, Texas, where there's plenty of, I assume, enough electricity, at least it sounded like it, but where there's enough air conditioning. But it is having a devastating impact, the heat in Europe. The whole northern hemisphere is affected. And in Britain, for example, where there's very little air conditioning, they've had to postpone operations. It's too hot. They're putting people in body bags to cool them down, not because they're dead, but because they're trying to keep them alive after heat stroke. It is an abysmal situation. You have fires even in Switzerland, fires in Greece. I mean, Northern Europe is in terrible trouble from the heat, and Southern Europe is in even worse shape. So we may have a new reality. If this is a new reality, it will change everything. We will have people migrating from the heat to the cool, which may already have started, they reached a temperature in the Middle East that was right on the edge of not being survivable for human beings. Well, if that happens a few years in a row, you'll see a huge outflow of people from the Middle East to somewhere, wherever they can get a purchase, whatever country will take them. We're going to see an acceleration of migration around the world. We're also going to have a greater dependence than we ever thought on electricity, not just electricity for transportation, electricity for all the old uses, but now the world will want air conditioning because it is almost impossible to live with this kind of heat without it. I'm curious as to whether we'll see a reverse of the long-standing migration from the Rust Belt to the Sun Belt, whether we're not going to see people coming back up north because of the heat. If this is going to be an annual occurrence with always the possibility that it could be slightly worse. So the world is in the balance and it is powerfully without leadership. There are no great, remarkable leaders who anybody has much confidence in. Now, obviously not in Russia. Who knows about China? And we're facing a presidential choice here between a reprehensible man and an old man. This is hardly the stuff of confidence. I was talking today to a very large Democratic donor. I cannot identify the person, of course, but pleading with me to somehow write something or do something to draw attention to the fact that Biden is not popular, that nobody has any confidence that he is able to perform for 6 years from now, and that desperately we need a Lochinvar, somebody new to come in and change things. I think of the Lochinvars as people like Obama, people like Clinton, who weren't well known beforehand, and then yet made a huge difference when they came to office. As it is, we have these retreads, one who seems to be totally preoccupied with conspiracy, and one who simply may be too old to do the job. And I can say that because I'm actually older than the president is. And I can tell you, Johnny, I hope you take note of this, that there are certain changes that take place in one's acuity with time. And I think we can see those a lack of vigor and maybe a lack of concentration and difficulty even in walking in the president. This is not a happy situation as you look at a world in a whole lot of trouble, some of it natural, some of it coming from the weather, and an awful lot of it political and military.
Yeah, interesting insights. So we have a great guest. I'm happy to introduce to you all for, he's been with us before, I think a couple of years ago, perhaps. Richard Medina, how are you, sir?
Hi, good afternoon. So I'm Richard Medina. I'm the Chief Energy Delivery Officer here at CPS Energy in San Antonio. And yes, it's hot here also in Texas. It's kind of warm. So for us, I mean, there's a lot of challenges out there, like everybody expressed. And first and foremost, I just want to do a shout out to our crews. I mean, they're out there working in the heat. And so we're making sure that they have all the nutrition in the mornings of, just making sure they're eating right and hydrating and making sure they're taking care of themselves as they make sure that the power grid is running efficiently. So I'll just turn it back over to you to see if there's any.
No, thanks for being with us, Richard. CPS Energy was created in 1860, and it's the nation's largest community-owned electric natural gas combined services company. They roughly provide electricity service to some 940,000 and some 384,000 in gas. Headquartered in beautiful San Antonio, a new headquarter building, and lots of growth in their counties and surrounding areas. And So Richard, tell us real quick, you are, basically driving one of the premier transformation stories of, all electricity business, all gas business to the new paradigms.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about maybe some of the key things that you're working on, you're driving, some of the key strategies or projects, and maybe we can dig into some of those.
Okay, so Benny Ethers leads our power gen efforts. So he's working on all the transformation towards making sure we're, on all the renewables and carbon reductions. On the distribution transmission side, we're making sure that we're ready for, moving all that power from different types of renewables that are going to be coming into the grid. And then just also making sure that we're using analytics to analyze and make sure that we're, with the analytics, you can create new products and services to help with demand reductions. We have healthy programs for conservation, making sure, people are conserving and keeping their bills down, because we are very mindful on our community, making sure that our energy is affordable for our community. But of course, I think everybody talked a little bit about extreme weather events. It is getting hotter and it's putting a lot of more pressure on the systems. We've seen a lot more freeze activities in Texas. And so I think everybody's now looking at making sure that we can weather both the hot and the cold extremes, which is a little unique for us. And so I think all of Texas is working on that. And then of course, just the reliability and resiliency, making sure that, the grid we're accelerating, putting out electronic equipment on the system so that we can do the self-healing things and prepare for future microgrids as battery storage continues to reduce in price. And, all the EVs are coming in, which are great. Those are great to fill in the gaps and make sure that, we can control loads. I mean, that is the future, making sure we're controlling loads and using energy efficiently.
Right. Tell us a little bit about what do you see on the growth of the solar panel, the energy storage, the EV, the smart appliances on the home, sort of the distributed energy resources. How is that growing? What are you guys doing about, integrating, planning that, controlling that, managing that? What are you guys' thoughts on how that's going?
Yeah, so right now we're piloting a bunch of different types of, just products and services to kind of get a sense for how we're going to connect all this stuff. The grid in the future is going to have to be, especially the distribution system, is going to have to be a lot smarter, just controlling, and balancing all the energy resources that are coming on. We have robust demand response programs, which is great. Our community participates in a lot of that, which is good. And so we can call on those during these high peak times, just to control thermostats. We do have some pilots on controlling EV chargers out there for customers, and that way they can control their own charger through us notifying them, or we can send a signal and either turn off the charger or throttle it down to a lower charge. The future is exciting because I think now you'll be able to, with communications, start connecting all those points and kind of look at the grid and spot locations of, hey, here's a transformer that's overloading and I got a bunch of EV charging on it. So maybe just turn off the chargers that, the cars that have a decent amount of charge on it and let the guys who don't have, who really need the charge, give them the ability to charge. So a lot of cool stuff. Battery storage is coming down. So eventually we're going to do some pilots on, putting battery storage and solar at the house, and kind of how's that going to work, and how can we call on those resources when needed and charge up those batteries in the evening, and then also offer resiliency products for that. We are working with SAWS, our local water utility here, and we're putting larger generators there to help with backup systems, but then also we can provide power back to the grid and create some new innovative ideas on if you need backup generation, you might as well invest a little more money and get something that we can also utilize for the grid. So a lot of cool things coming on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, how you doing, Richard? Welcome. You know, Richard, your
Hey.
playbook is really full, and I
Yeah.
find it very, very interesting as you fly the biggest machine in the world. But I want to talk about sourcing. Well, you know, you talked about the sourcing coming from different places,
Mhm.
then demand, and then price, and especially for the utilities themselves. And we know the old idea about supply and demand, so therefore things will go up. But another interesting variable in all of that is volunteering. That
Mhm.
is, in your model, I live in Austin, Texas. I must volunteer not to do X, Y, and Z, whether it's, you know, cut down on electricity, or whether it's don't water my yard, and etc. It seemed to me, Richard, that one of your biggest issues before we talk about the actual technology is communication with the people that you serve. Knowing that as a person myself, we really don't think much about electricity in everyday life. We just want it there. So, what are the things that you're doing to communicate with the customers better, to make them more aware of what will happen if X, Y, and Z does not happen that they should do? You mentioned in passing communication, but is it
Mhm.
cell phones? Is it through television? Because we get it every day, but you know, I'm not sure people really pay attention. I want my golf course all electricity on. I want my water. I want my grass green from the electric. I mean, come on. So how do you communicate that in the whole equation of sourcing, demand, supply, and then the voluntary part?
Yeah, I mean, we our corporate com folks are really leading the charge on communication with customers, and they work with the media folks, and we have text messaging that goes out. So we do have, I mean, if you go onto our website, that has a chart there that they've been posting, and the media has been covering a lot on energy conservation. And so they have some tiers in there, and then if it goes into a different color mode, then the media folks and our internal folks will start sending messaging out to folks, and we get a good response with that. But you're right, a lot of it's education, making sure people understand. And then the future is overlaying the technology with the folks that, you know, you might be at work and you can't turn off things. And so getting behind the meter and controlling things is going to be key in the future. But
Well, let me ask you about the future. Right now,
yeah.
you know, we want to go to the cloud.
Mhm.
Okay, as we go from behind the meter and etc. Do you think the cloud itself is have enough capacity to handle everything that's going to be asked it to handle, or do we have to go to another system that's a return to something that's more local than all of the clouds that we're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, there'll be combinations of systems. I don't think anybody's going to rely on one system to control everything. I mean, a lot of the, you know, softwares are moving towards the cloud, but we do also have our own AMI system where we can utilize that to send signals, and, you know, cell phone technology or you know, the private LTEs out there. So there's going to be a variety of different communication platforms to I guess achieve what we need in the future. So I don't
And
think
one
we're
in
going
ter- and my question is in terms of price. If I'm willing to
to.
pay, you know, $20,000 a year just for my electricity, is there a market for the Mercedes owners of the world? Do everyone have to contend with the idea we want it there and we want it as cheap as possible? If so, it would be the only product in the world where they don't look at the relationship between, hey, let's do a upscale electricity for Llewellyn King who can pay. That's independent of everybody else. So if I come to you and say, look, I need my electricity. Forget about all these rates. I fly a private plane. I got 4 houses in Texas. Uh, is there a place for me?
I think eventually, I mean, there's
I mean, right now, are you thinking like that?
I mean, right now we have a variety of products and services and things for different types of customers out there. I mean, I think there's some more work to do around people who want extra resiliency. If you're, if you don't want your power out at all, I mean, I think utilities work with data centers very well to create those resiliency products on, backup systems or, combinate. We do that today with a lot of the data centers, working with them to make sure that they have resiliency from different substations and circuits from different substations, and then they have backup systems on site and UPSs, and there's where there's a need, there's always a solution, right? So
Thank you.
It seems to me that Johnny wants an electric supply that he can ship to the neighbors.
I think that's what he wants. Yes.
Let me get down to the earth. We've got the heat wave. You're in the middle of the heat belt, and CPS is holding out very well and doing very creative things. Where is the stress? I understand the stress on windmills because you have lower density altitude. There's stress on solar panels because the electrons get overexcited. How much does that cost you in power supply? And are those things that we should be worried about for the future with renewables, that they they have this high-end degradation of quality?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, I mean, historically, we've always diversified our fleets, and renewables and diversification, and then everything's going to be good and key in the future. Just you're not relying on one specific type, so that if like you mentioned, if that occurs, you have something else to lean on. And so we're going to continue to look at. There's a lot of cool stuff coming out. I mean, we're also talking to some folks here at the military base, looking at geothermal and other systems. There's those linear generators and different types of things that are out there. So I think in the future, I mean, it's going to be a combination. I don't think there's any one silver bullet anybody's going to want to rely on. It's going to be a mixture.
Today, you're under stress. Where are the stress points? When you go into your control room and look around, what are you looking for? Where do you expect stress and possible outages, or what is working very hard in the infrastructure of CPS Energy today?
Yeah, so today it's really making sure. I mean, we have great engineers who do a lot of modeling and planning, and so we are always looking at, hey, how do we improve that? How do we improve just the data collection so that you can model systems and make sure that you have adequate capacity? And we've been fortunate to make sure that we do have the adequate capacity, and then of course the automation and technology, so that if a circuit is overloading over here, we can click some switches electronically and reroute power through different parts of our system. So I mean, finally,
Richard, in this segment, what are your expectations for artificial intelligence? I've been talking to EPRI. In fact, I recorded a television program yesterday, and they're very excited about it. And some companies are, in fact, using artificial intelligence, for example, fire control, mitigation. What are your expectations for artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, we're excited about it. I mean, there's always pros and cons on any different types of technologies, but utilizing artificial intelligence, I think, can help with, we talked about all the generation mixes that are coming to the distribution level. I mean, all that's going to have to be analyzed real time, and I think that is a perfect place for AI to help us with that. Also with even transmission, evaluating transmission, looking at dynamic ratings real time with AI, where you're not having to have full sensors everywhere, looking at weather patterns and heat and wind and all that information. I mean, AI is gonna be the future in a lot of applications.
Thank you, Richard.
Richard, real quick.
Yes.
What are your thoughts of the following use case? I know it's not going to happen anytime soon,
Oh, okay.
but Ford is very popular selling the F-150s, and the F-150 Lighting is coming.
Right.
How do you, and again, it's not a trick question, right? And, you and I have talked about this different ways, but how do you think it's going to come about the fact that there will be, say, out of the 2 million cars in San Antonio, 100,000 will be F-150 Lightnings. And when they're connected to the grid or sending energy back to the grid, how is that going to come about?
Yeah, so I don't have a truck.
How do we
but
get there? How do we get there? Can we get there? Can we get there?
Yeah. I mean, our teams have always been, looking for opportunities, and those are, although they sound like problems, I mean, those are great opportunities for a utility, right? I mean, it's great to figure out, hey, and it's cool stuff figuring out, hey, how do I craft programs and the communications and the automation to kind of help us balance the grid? I mean, so
Right.
it's some people are going to want to be charging, and some people are going to want to be putting power back on the grid, and we're going to be there ready to connect everybody. The tools aren't here today, but I think I know everybody's looking at how is all those technologies going to work together. And I know ERCOT has some pilots going on, just figuring out, hey, how you're going to connect vehicles and battery storage at the house. Because eventually, batteries in itself, just with EVs, are going to continue to drop in price. And,
Sure.
it's just a matter of time before we start putting batteries at the home.
Yeah.
Let me ask the same question a different way. But all the research that's been funded from Washington, D.C., all the technology is sitting on the shelf. There's nothing that we cannot solve.
Right.
Whether it's distributed, it's on the shelf. We spend billions and billions of dollars every year. Congress allocates to our major organization designed for research. But when you mix in, as I like to say, that you are living off of 1920 technology, making billions and billions of dollars off of 1920 technology, when you mix in the risk of all the utilities, and you mix in the fact that you got to fly this thing and change it, what are the incentives for us to bring the technology off of the shelf, roll it down, put it on, and get this? Because Andrea's got to have his truck. He's doing this, he's got to have his truck. What's the incentive to do that? Look, we're not lack of technologies. We're not lack of visions to change this huge machine. The business models, why should I change? So why should I change if I'm doing well and I'm living on that technology that was put in, in 1938? Why should I change?
Yeah, I mean, I think why should you change is because, like you mentioned, the model itself will change whether you change or don't change, right? So we want to embrace and make sure that we're an enabler for all those technologies and all this new load that's coming, and we're okay with, if we're going to be shuffling energy from customer A to customer B or through their system. I mean, that is a new business model that we have to be ready for. I mean, so I think it all depends on how you want to, what viewpoint you want to take. So I mean,
here's the reality. Here's the reality. Professor Andreas Cavalier has showed me the following. If everybody plugged in an EV today, what would happen? That should not be the case in America. We have the technology to take care of that. So he can go back to his lecture notes, create the formula, and tell you exactly what would happen to America. Oh, by the way, to Japan. Oh, and by the way, and to China. On the one hand, everybody is saying to me, cut your electricity, we're in a heat wave. On the other hand, people are saying, run out and buy an EV. What the hell is going on here? So what we're saying is this. It's the issue of the Titanic going down. It's not the issue of saying we're going to have a new business model. We're pushing a great miss of the greatness of EVs and everything else, right? On the other hand, we're not doing anything to make sure that the technology that is already sitting on the shelves at universities and other places can be utilized. So I would say we have seen an iceberg, and the iceberg is everybody plugging in the EV. Now, I don't consider myself to be a Tesla, the scientist, not the car. But Andreas has really educated us on the relationship, demand and supply, and what we are not ready for. So my question is, you're up on the ship, and the iceberg is all of the EVs. What do you do? What do you do how do you get the federal regulated people to say, regulators, we need to change, and we need to do this as quickly as possible with the technology that we already have sitting on the shelf? Now, if I'm wrong, let me know.
Yeah, let me chime in something before Richard, but you're putting him on the spot in a way.
Yeah.
But
Wait, hold on. You know, Professor,
no,
that's
but
what we
let
do.
me
Put you on the spot. I just want to
but
know.
let me kind of couch the thinking here, right? So first of all, ERCOT, San Antonio, is not really regulated by FERC, right? So Texas is an anomaly on that. So FERC creates policies, and we kind of go along, do things differently in Texas. So that's one thing that is going on here. The other thing that, having been a utility guy, a dumb old utility guy at Austin Energy, that a lot of people, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier, Johnny, a lot of people think the utilities are monopolies and the utilities take advantage of that, and that's not the case. Utilities are incredibly highly regulated. I don't know how many reports Richard prints every month to how many stakeholders. I used to do like 300 reports. The amount of people watching what you're doing at the utility is incredible. And so what I think it needs to happen is sort of like how cybersecurity was handled. So this administration in particular, has all these goals of decarbonization and EVs everywhere. And those are good goals to have. But there's something called physics, and then something called affordability that gets in the way of those goals happening like over a weekend, right? So utilities, I think, need to be trusted more, like in cybersecurity with FERC and NERC. FERC issued a mandate on cybersecurity, but NERC is the one that deploys it and manages it on behalf of the utilities. And it's really self-regulating in many ways, right? Utilities determine how they're going to do it, because, you can't just raise the price of everything. I mean, I'm sure Richard would love to spend $3 trillion upgrading the grid tomorrow morning to the coolest things, but I don't think that his customers are going to pay for it. So that's the challenge, right, Richard? You have this, I want to do all these things, but how do I pay for them, right?
Well, let me add to this. I mean, if the government could do the highways, we certainly could do the grid. So, I mean, I think that, as we like to say, broadband and et cetera, it's the new Interstate Highway.
Yeah.
And so my question is,
let Richard
go ahead, Richard. I'm sorry. I put you on the spot, and Richard, I meant to put you on the spot. So let's see.
Okay. No, I mean, our teams are always looking at, Texas is growing in EVs. California has a lot of incentives. And so we're always working as a utility group together to make sure that, we're solving each other's problems and helping each other out. And again, you're absolutely right. If everybody went and turned on their ACs all at the same time, and we would still have issues. But, like Andrea was saying, our job is to make sure that we have tools and programs and things in place, because at the end of the day, our customers understand this stuff too. And putting EVs, I don't think anybody's going to go and turn on EVs during the peak. They could, and And so in the future, a lot of it's price signals to penalize folks if you're doing that, or incent people not to do that. But I think most utilities right now are taking the viewpoint of, hey, EVs are a great thing, right? We're doing a lot of conservation and energy reductions, and here's another way to kind of move lower peaks, but kind of spread out the energy. And so there's a lot of capacity in the evenings. And the same thing, we got a lot of wind and renewables. And if you have, excess power, I mean, through price signals, I mean, if you put too much solar on the grid, and in Europe and other places, I mean, they have too much solar, and what are you going to do with the power? And so there has to be a way of storing that energy or putting it in, in something useful in your vehicles. And so I think through price signals and alike like that, through programs, we'll be able to manage the loads. Yeah. So
I have two questions, Richard. One
Yes,
of
sir.
which it builds on something you said about putting a battery in the home if you've got a service. But there are people, there's a school of thought, and I think Nevada is ahead in this, that say don't put it in the home because you've got insurance issues, you've got fire issues.
Right.
Substation, where it can be controlled and where you can draw on it as though it is your private bank account of power. That's
Yes,
one, and I wonder what you think about that. And the other is Texas, like the rest of the country, is highly dependent on natural gas. 38%, and CPS, I know, is dependent on natural gas. And yet the federal government is working very hard to phase out natural gas. They have one target, which is 2035, and an absolute zero natural gas, zero coal target by 2050. So they choose to talk about gas as a transition fuel. But I don't know any utilities that have plans to transition out of gas. They're transitioning out of coal into gas often.
Yeah, and I think the thought is that new generation type mixes will be coming in the future. So EPRI has a whole low carbon research initiative that we're part of, and a lot of folks are part of, to look at what are the future generation mixes in the future. But you're absolutely right. I mean, most utilities in the industry are moving away from coal, going to natural gas as a bridge, including more renewables and storage, and there's going to have to be some other new type of developments that are coming out. So, I mean, I think people are looking at hydrogen mixes, synthetic blends for fuels to try and balance everything. The same thing and I think we ran some numbers, I don't remember the number offhand, but if we got rid of all the natural gas here, it would create more peaks and we would have to build more generation. So it's kind of like, hey, let's continue working down this path and start changing some of the mixes so that we can get to those newer technologies that are all being tested out there.
Right.
As a utility, how do you feel about carbon capture and storage?
That's a Benny Ethers question. So that's my power plant buddy. So I would have to grab him. I don't know where he's at, but so.
Well, let me ask you this: what do you think about what do you think about state legislatures passing laws against the use of traditional kind of enterprises? I'm just asking. I mean, it's a lot going on. The great state of Louisiana passed a law and said oil and gas is where we are, and oil and gas is where we will be, and the hell with everybody else.
Yeah.
I
will have to say that
it's regulated. Yes. Okay.
I will save that one from my partner. unless Andreas wants to take a crack.
Yeah.
Well, here's the deal.
So Richard, there is a, you've talked about it and you have programs, you're doing wonderful things. Do you see, what technologies do you think, I'm just curious from your point of view, what technologies are you trying to figure it out? What things are you trying to figure it out to really make your grid more flexible, more scalable, more resilient? Is it broadband? Are you looking at cellular? Are you trying to figure out how you do more real-time controls on the grid itself? Or are you trying to use more, perhaps, artificial intelligence? What things are you guys thinking that are things that you're trying to figure it out, how to make that grid better?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above. I think, I mean, right now we invested a while back in AMI, and it's a different type of technology. And, there's private LTE, and then of course all the 5G stuff that's coming out. So our IT teams and communication folks are always going to continue looking at, how to leverage those systems, because in the future, real-time stuff is going to be important
Mhm.
for managing the grid. I mean, you're going to need a lot faster communications
Right.
than we have today.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a question that's more relevant. When you look at your customer satisfaction responses, what are their major concerns? That is, when you analyze what people think about where we are, that is, not that we think about it much. But we have had disastrous stuff here in Central Texas, and heat and cold, I might add. So
Yeah.
when you sit around your table in the morning, Monday morning or whatever, and you look at the responses of what people are concerned about, what are those responsibles? I mean, what are they concerned about, your customers?
Well, affordability. I mean, everybody, wants to use energy, and it needs to be affordable. And so that is one thing. We do hear a lot about reliability and resiliency, right? Making sure that the lights are on, and a lot of it's like y'all mentioned in the very beginning about communications. And so we've been doing a lot of efforts just around communications when there's outages and things that happen on the grid. It's like, hey, let us know what's going on so that we can make alternative plans and just make sure that it's that understanding. If your power's out at your house, is it an hour, is it 2 hours, is it 8 hours? If it's 8 hours, I might go somewhere else or go do something. If it's going to be an hour, I can kind of rough it out. And the same thing, just kind of overlaying that with the folks that have medical equipment, just making sure we're communicating to them and getting out to them. So I mean, we have staff that monitors that and is in communication when folks are out more than 4 hours. But the key thing is the communication piece. I think everybody wants faster communications, and everybody's used to their phones now, and something happens, whatever social media platform you're on, you get real-time information. And so our communication folks are actually monitoring that, and they'll post things of, hey, there's an outage over here, and our crews are on the way, and they'll post a picture of a balloon in the line, or somebody's didn't had a canopy out there the other day a while back, and they didn't tie it down, and it flew up into the line and stuff like that. And they're like, oh wow. So there's just there's a huge effort around communications, and really that's what people want. It's just they want to know what happened, and how long is this going to take if there's an outage.
Well, the reason why I asked that, we're going to jump 10 years ahead. And let us say I'm here at my house and everything goes out.
Yeah.
And I go to the Renaissance, and I stay in the Renaissance for 2 days, and that bill is now $1,500. And I think you should pay the bill. Whether or not it wasn't my fault in our litigious society, but I have a deal with you. But I remember that I understand we're a regulated industry. But I'm talking about, I think, how society is moving. People are now suing McDonald's for gaining weight, right?
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
So do you think there ever come a time where where as a customer, I missed the airplane, and you put me up at a hotel because it wasn't my fault that the airplane was missed. You should have done something else. Do you think, in your futuristic idea, it would ever come to a point where when your electricity goes out in the heat and people find a hotel, that you will reimburse them?
That's a great question.
I'm just asking. I would never, Richard, I would never start. I am not a Llewellyn King. I'm not going to start any stuff. I'm just asking.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think our hope, or not hope, but when we start looking at things, and we talked a little bit about like battery storage, right? Battery storage, if we can deploy on the systems, And Llewellyn King mentioned it. We did apply for some DOE grants to do battery storage at substations, and that way you can put one big battery there, and we can have build resiliency and kind of some microgrids and strategically deploy generation assets around the systems. So I think the industry's kind of already thinking about just resiliency and that just how to make it all work. And I think customers have a part in it too, because it's not all going to be on the utility. And that's why I was going, well, there's battery storage, and there's some utilities already piloting putting battery storage at the home and some at the substation, and that way you can have a few hours while we reconfigure lines or pick up something that's failed, equipment failure, or whether something got into a line or somebody dug into a line. So I think there's always going to be a mixture of solutions for solving that problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question about NIMBYs. NIMBY is a word that's entered the general conversation, not in my backyard. And utilities have been very affected by NIMBYism. To what extent is CPS affected? The things you would like to do that you're not being allowed to do because local groups say no, no, no.
Yeah, I think every utility has challenges with that. I mean, I've read some of them, and other states have even more challenges. Just even burying lines. I mean, I think some areas are like, hey, I don't even want you digging up my street to bury the line for resiliency. I mean, sometimes we'll try and bury overhead lines, and we have had some areas where they're like, hey, I don't, just leave it overhead. I don't want it underground. I mean, I think there's just a lot of different opportunities, so we kind of can move around and pivot a little bit, but we haven't had like areas where it just became a real issue. So
you have transmission anxiety. I mean, would you like to have new lines built that you can't build? Are you hoping to bring in solar power or wind power from a greater distance, and you're inhibited in that?
Yes, actually, so as our community was growing years ago, we kind of built a 138 line around San Antonio and a 345 line. So we have good capacity within our area, and the external pieces we are working with ERCOT, because it is approved through ERCOT on transmission upgrades, and we are looking at building a line further south and a line further north to get more renewables from the south and more renewables from the north to our area. So we haven't had like I mean, I think when they do the routing and siting, it goes through ERCOT and the PUC. I mean, they have their process, and they'll select a route, and we haven't had real issues where you can't build a line.
Right.
So
Richard,
luckily they're outside the San Antonio area, and they're more rural areas.
Richard, real quick, let me go back to maybe your last monthly meeting, planning meeting, or your last Monday meeting. Share with us what are the top 3 or 4 things you guys are working on that you can talk about.
Well, I mean, I think in the industry, cybersecurity is always, a hot topic there. Physical security is another one. I mean, you've seen some folks shooting substation transformers and things like that. So the whole security front is an issue. And one of the hot topics, we started off talking about it earlier, was just supply chain issues, right? So we're a growing community, and it's harder and harder to get supplies of transformers and now poles and wire and different things, meters, and it's just an interesting time right now where all the supply chain issues are a challenge.
Are you deploying, or have you been looking at alternative connector technology, different materials in your connectors?
Yes, sir. Yeah. We kind of open up and start looking at all different types of technologies and different ways of doing things. I mean, we were, like on transformers, there's different types. So we're looking at different types. Even trying to see if there's some of the other newer types of transformers, solid state transformers and things. But I think the supply chain industry in itself is just, all the industries are kind of strained right now.
Do you think we'll see a change in the connectors? We'll be going to, say, carbon fiber and aluminum from steel and copper?
I would think that there's going to be some new different types of materials inserted into the utility world, especially more electronic transformers and stuff like that. I mean, the technologies are there. It's just the pricing's still high. And then now with the prices, you can't get certain types of transformers, it'll open up the door for other technologies. So,
So in terms of in the American continent itself and where resources are located, which states would be the winners and the losers, or the winners with
Texas.
suppliers with new? I mean, if you're looking at maybe stuff that's around, maybe stuff that's in Louisiana, maybe stuff that's in Texas, maybe stuff that's in Idaho, because to solve the supply chain, then I think that we have most of the elements that we need, although I haven't looked in a long time. When you look around the world, crystal might be abandoned within abundance in some places. Have you looked at that, or have you guys thought about that?
We haven't really been searching for the supply chain, the raw material pieces. I mean, I think we've been trying to diversify different types of equipment, whether it's wood poles with fiberglass poles and steel poles and a variety of different mixes, so that when one's constrained, we can move to another. Same thing with transformers. We were looking at solid state type transformers, which are a little more expensive, but I mean, I think that eventually those will kind of hopefully lead the pack in the future and kind of, give you more data on usages of transformers and things like that. It's going to be a variety. I don't think there's any one winner out there.
So Richard, I see lots of great changes since Rudy took over and was finally confirmed full time. And I see you guys got Ileana back and all kinds of cool things going on. There's something the utility is always dealing with, and I'm curious where you guys are at on the succession journey of losing your baby boomers, especially in one area, the lineman area. When was the last time the CPS Energy won the Lineman Rodeo, and when is it going to be in San Antonio again? And how is that coming? How many new linemen are you guys signing up every month?
I mean, well, actually, we have our own apprentice program, and I'm glad you mentioned the Lineman Rodeo. So they had the Texas Lineman Rodeo in Seguin last weekend, and we won 7 different trophies, including our barbecue team was there, and they won the second prize for chicken, second and third place. So we got the food and we got the linemen, so winning trophies. So I want to congratulate them for all their hard work and just supporting the community. So yeah. So I think I know APPA has the Lineman Rodeo and they rotate theirs. So I don't know where we're at on the list. So hopefully it'll be coming to San Antonio.
But I'm curious, is it harder or easier these days to get folks to join the company, or?
We're getting good. I mean, we got our good HR group that they find folks for us when we need them. And so right now we have classes, apprentice classes that are going on to make more linemen. So I mean, it takes a couple of years for us to create a lineman, and so they're going through those journeys right now. So I
have told the fact that you guys run a very great shop down there to Llewellyn and John Butler, and maybe Richard, you take a leap of faith with me, and we invite them to take an apprentice course, kind of a 1-week course, because I want to take a picture of Llewellyn on the power lines, kind of strap holding, 50 feet up in the air. I know that he wants to do it, kind of one of those bucket things.
Yeah, we had Rudy went up and actually touched the 345 line.
Did it?
Barehanded live, yeah. We both,
Nice.
that was a
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
There you go, Llewellyn. Let's put it on your bucket list.
Yeah.
Touching the 345 barehanded.
yeah. I think I still feel my hair tingling from,
Well, I have worked with plutonium, and I'm still here in the box, and I have been sorts of strange situations when I was younger in Africa, including when they were building the Tariba Dam on the Zambezi, just impoundment of water on Earth, and it nearly washed away during construction, and I was there. So anyway, I'm ready to go up in your bucket truck.
All right.
Tell Rudy I'm keen to do it.
Yeah, okay.
Well-
Richard, what's ahead of you the next 6 months? You know, I understand you guys are doing all kinds of things at CGRID and other conferences. We have a conflict with our Digital 360 Summit. You guys are not going to be around. Maybe some of your lieutenants
No,
can join
we're
us.
gonna send some. We're sending some folks there. And
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think
But
people
but tell me what's in front of you the next 6 months. What's going on?
The next 6 months, I mean, I think we'll be preparing for the winter season. It's like preparing
Right.
for the summer season, preparing for the winter season. You know, there's just a lot of stuff going on, and
Anything that is happening in Mexico about us exporting power or bringing power from Mexico? Anything going on there?
you'll probably have to talk to the ERCOT guys on that one.
Just curious, because you know
Yeah.
they would call you. I don't know. It
Well,
seems like
let me
there's
ask you
always
this.
a need
Now, I
for
was-
more stuff going down there.
in
Yeah.
terms of how you see how you see the world in the future, I was a major consultant for a major insurance company in America. And when you look at weather patterns, I'm sure you look at that. What are they saying for the future? So, you know, insurance companies can move out of states, they can move into states, they cannot insure, and they should, and they do that on the basis of the data that they have coming from meteorologists. How do you see the data? What are they telling us about the future? Let's say that you are an insurance company. What does the future look like for the weather patterns?
Yeah, I mean I mean we are always interested in working with the same thing. EPRI has their climate ready and kind of looking at, you know, what are the climate changes that we need to prepare for the future. I mean, I think for us a few years ago we increased some of the standards that we have on overhead systems, just making sure they'll be able to withstand higher winds and ice loading and things like that. That's a continued effort looking at, you know, the future and how climate will affect grids. So there's still a lot of work to do there.
Yeah.
I mean, do you see rough times ahead? Is it cutting back with the number of storms increase? What do your data line look like, if I may ask there?
It's been fluctuating. I mean, I don't really have like you know, that crystal ball to say, you know, what types of weather patterns Texas is gonna see as a whole.
Yeah.
It's gonna
Yeah.
affect the grid.
Let me ask you one last question, a topic that a lot of people
Okay.
don't talk about, vegetation management. Remind
Yes.
us real quick at the top of your head, how many miles do you guys cut? How often do you go around the cycle? 4 years, 5 years? You got a lot of trees in San Antonio.
Yeah, so we've been increasing our veg management program, and we are using LiDAR to fly over the system and using that technology and the tools and the data to kind of pinpoint where we need to trim. We are going to be looking at, you know, satellite imagery, because you can do that a lot quicker and kind of see the differences between LiDAR systems and satellite imagery just for vegetation management. We have 8,000 miles of overhead. Not all the overhead has trees in it. So right now we're trimming close to 700 miles per year.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just, it's just an ongoing program. And then we also have an underground strategic undergrounding program where if it's really heavy vegetation and hard to get to, we'll underground specific areas. So we're using a mixture of different things and technologies. Just
How many licensed drone pilots in the fleet?
actually, we just put out an RFP for a drone RFP, so we can get additional, contractors to kind of help with that. So we
Sure.
do have some in-house folks that fly drones, and we're trying to expand that. So
There you go. Gentlemen, final thoughts.
all
Well,
right.
I think in terms of managing, I've always found it interesting that you cannot take on disruptive technologies right away because you are a regulated industry, unlike many industries, right, around the world. I find it interesting also that we always concentrate on making sure that it's affordable rather than being available. I don't think any other industry does that, but I think that's also good. So when you sit down at a table to manage what you have to manage, I can't even imagine looking at what the federal government would say, or people who regulate you. But I would say that I think you can take advantage of all of the forecasters when it comes to what the weather program would look like, and I would also put that on your website. I would make it a weather page too. We're projecting this, and when this goes, and just don't depend on that. So otherwise, good luck.
Thank you. And happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Llewellyn, final thoughts.
I would like to salute Richard for mentioning the line people. Those people have just very tough lives. The worst of weather, the worst of terrain, danger. I've heard of linemen that have to deal with snakes up the pole, all kinds of things. It's a good job, but it is a tough job, and it needs a great deal of esprit to be well handled. And I think that we're very fortunate, and they belong in the same world with the same reverence as any emergency responder.
Yeah, I actually have a different view on it, having hanging out with many of those people. Those guys and gals are very much Indiana Jones type of people.
Yeah.
They're not afraid of anything, and they're very adventurous.
About the bucket truck, I'm not an Indiana Jones type of person.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Anyway,
Richard, very
Richard,
much.
thank you.
Very enlightening.
Thank you for being with us today, and wish you the very best, and we'll stay in touch. Hopefully we'll come visit you soon. So any final thoughts from you?
No, just thank you for having me, and you're always welcome to come visit us if you're in San Antonio. We'll be happy to show you around.
There you go.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Johnny, take us away.
All my trials, Lord, soon be over. Hush, little baby, don't you cry. You know, Mama was born to live. So all our trials, Lord, will soon be over. Thank you, Andreas. Are you there? I wanted to do I am a lineman for the county.
There you go.
And I work the main line. But thank you very much. Okay.
I'm going to stop
Yes.
recording. Thank you, guys. It
Thank
was
you.
wonderful.